Welcome to Holding Space. Michael Zen is a visual producer and creative photographer using his imaginative visionary energy to channel Zen and hold space for spiritual and innovative discussion. Each episode creates a supportive, accepting, and open environment that allows exploration and expertise to come together with engaging and entertaining convergence. With guest and community all helping the shape of the way, Michael is grateful to be together to hold space. Now here is your host of Holding Space, Michael Zen.
Hello, and yes, here I am again, holding space and holding sage, my trusty bowl. For those of you who have been here before in this space, you're getting familiar with my new kind of introduction to the show. I really love, since I'm holding space, I really love to kind of clear out the space before we start, right? And get all on the same page. And I do that with this amazing sound bowl that I got. Its name is Sage. I've named it Sage because of its purple color. But it's amazing. I don't know if you could hear it, but it responds to my voice when I'm talking. It's actually ringing right now. It's going, ooh, and I just love it so much. I'm connected to it. So what I love to do, what I've been doing, is taking a nice deep breath in through the nose all together and releasing it as I strike the bowl. So we all know how to breathe. It's not like a yoga class where you might not know the moves. This one's pretty easy. It's just in through the nose and out through the mouth, and let's clear out the space. I don't know if you guys can hear it. I feel like you can. I mean, it's still ringing, and it's amazing. And then I've got to put it over here, of course, so that it doesn't ring out. Anyway, welcome to Holding Space. My name is Michael Zen. It's Tuesday. It's June 10th. And it's a really interesting moment. I wanted to kind of come up with a little thing about what am I doing here, right? And right now, I feel like many people feel like, and it seems pretty evident, that the world is going through a shift. For some people, I think that shift is intense and heavy and fearful, and for other people I believe it's loving and excited, but it's real, and we can all feel it, and that's what this show is all about. I'm here to hold space, right? Not everybody, I don't want to start talking about people, but there's a lot of taking space happening, right? Situations, the things that are going on outside you take a lot of space, take a lot of energy. I'm here to hold space. I'm here to introduce you guys to another wonderful human being and share the moment and make everything better. I want to say hello to Jennifer Rose. I want to say hello to Kim Princess. I want to say hello to CJ. I want to say hello to Bernadette, Eveline, Awesome, Tammy. Thank you guys for showing up. I appreciate it. We're all here together. We've all made an intentional effort to be here in this moment. So I'm excited because, as well as you and me, my guest has made an intentional effort to be here and share the space and share her vibration with everybody, which seems to be what she's all about, which is, I love that. From the minute we started talking on the phone, it was just like, here we are. And welcome to Holding Space, Suri Sawyer. How you doing?
I'm wonderful. Thank you, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing good. And that is definitely one of my favorite answers to that question. How you doing? Often out during the day, I ask people how you doing, and you get answers like, oh, I'm hanging in there, you know. But my favorite answer is I'm doing awesome, or I'm doing wonderful, or somebody who really knows how to use their energy intentionally, right? And create their reality.
Sometimes I like to answer with, I'm delicious.
That's a good one too. I
Yeah,
like that, actually. I think I might start using that one.
I'm delicious. Thank you for asking. Good to see you, Kim. Hi, Jennifer.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We do have a couple of people out here excited to see you. So thank you for coming. I love this community that's growing. I want to give a shout out to Sacred Spiral, Kelly Brickle, Jennifer Rose. Jennifer put so much effort into the Sacred Spiral as well as Kelly. I'm always shouting out Kelly, but Jennifer is also like a nice figurehead over there who she's just so amazing. I mean, I love the way she relates to everybody. It's like kind of like a reflection, right? Like you and I, the way we were talking, it's like, somebody who walks through life without judgment, and from their heart. I believe that energy is part of this shift that's happening, and you can feel it. You can feel it when you encounter it. And hopefully that's why people show up here to this show, and hopefully we'll be able to spread a little bit of that. But you were recommended to me to be a guest on Holding Space. Kelly said, I got some people that I think you should hold space for, and you were on that list. And I want you to tell me why. I mean, I'm sure that I trust Kelly, but what has brought you? I did a little research. I looked at your website, which is down there, womenbealive.com. I love the whole divine feminine empowerment movement and energy that's happening as a part of this shift as well. I think it's really important, and I love being able to. It was a struggle at first for me being a guy, right? Because there were so many events happening, and they were like, "Oh, it's an empowerment women event," yeah, you're kind of not welcome. But I being who I am, I have a lot of friends who are doing this kind of stuff. So I am usually welcome if I want to. I don't usually intrude. I let it be a woman's thing, but I don't feel that way anymore. I certainly feel part of the whole, right? Like we're all part of the whole. And I think that's an important thing as well.
I have a question for you about that.
Sure.
What was the process of getting more comfortable with the transition? Because I'm also aware that as the feminine started to rise, there was almost like an inferiority and loss of placement for a lot of the masculine and the way that it was showing up. So what was that process like for you, from going from, like what's happening and where's my place, to feeling comfortable in relating to the feminine empowerment?
Great question. And nice job flipping the switch there. I think it's all a part of my moment and my journey in kind of coming into who I am and really understanding my own accountability in that, right? And in how I feel, in how I make others feel, in how I present myself. All of these things started to become more, not, I wouldn't say important to me, but I was more aware of them. And I saw that, I was in charge of the energy, like what I put where. And I think, not feeling welcome someplace, seeing an event and being like, oh, I'm a guy, I'm not, well, that doesn't feel good. And I don't like to not feel good. So I choose to feel good. And it's just, I think at this point, it was just really easy for me to not take it personally. You know what I mean? And I mean, I think that's even one of the 4 agreements, right? Is to I know there's like, I mean, it's not the 4 agreements that I'm thinking. There's something in one of these little wisdom blurbs about, not taking things personally. It's not about you, it's like, it's we're all in this together, and you need to take that perspective of what someone else is doing isn't necessarily to you, right? It's for them. What I mean? And that also helped me understand the need for it. I'm certainly, more aware as a guy of society and how it is, right? And growing up, I mean, I certainly went through my humanity, right? And in understanding my relationship with other people, males, females, what that all meant. And now it's it's so funny, sir. You've got me thinking about like a lot of things right now, the way that I think about things and the way that what's the process, right? You asked me what was the process. And now it's like, I don't even get upset at the things that people say and might evoke, and like, it's such an argumentative landscape out there right now, right? It's on social media, that it's almost like people are trying to pick a fight, like, oh, I dare you, I got something to say, you're gonna say something about it, I dare you. And I'm just like, okay, no, I don't got nothing to say about it, you know what I mean? You enjoy your moment, you know what I mean? Enjoy it. And I hope it felt good.
And we, like, from my experience, it only feels good for about 10 seconds. Right?
Exactly.
I am curious. Thank you for sharing the process. I noticed
thank you.
You were expressing that it was about changing your relationship to different things and learning how to not personalize certain experiences. And then I also wanted to comment, I think something that's so funny and interesting about the concept of holding space is, let's say that there are some women that want to get together and just have a woman's circle. Like, what a way to hold space to say, yeah, you guys do that. Right? It's still a form of holding space, right?
Thank you. There you go. I love that you said that. That's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, and it is. And again, that's a part of this amazing moment in time for me personally in my journey. I feel like as you start to become aware, right? And I'm not a big fan of the terminology, right? Spiritual journey, you know.
We can get new vernacular. I think it's time.
Yeah. I mean, spiritual, you know, people say spiritual journey, and I mean, oh, you mean life? You're talking about life?
Oh, you mean this thing that we're all in?
Yeah. Oh, now I forgot what I was saying. What was I saying about the quotes? What was the term?
This, like, awakening.
Yeah. So I think as you become more aware, you know, of things, you know, you stop asking the questions, right? When people say, oh, you can create your own reality, and then people don't understand that, they're just like, well, what do you mean? And they're trying to understand it from a very three-dimensional perspective. And it's not necessarily a three-dimensional question or answer.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because we're not just three-dimensional beings.
We're multidimensional. And to speak to that too, I think we start asking better questions. And that's where the fun begins, is when, like, I have experienced for myself and for other people, something will be happening and they'll say, why da 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 da. And I'm like, really? That's the question you're asking? It's going to get us nowhere. Ask a better question.
Right. Oh my God. Wow. This is amazing. I'm already having a blast because I feel like I don't know what a session with you is like, but I almost feel like that's what's happening right now. And it's awesome because I didn't ask for it, and I welcome it.
Thank you for welcoming it.
Yeah. I totally. I listen. I feel like one of the biggest things that I say all the time, right? These little cliches, these little bursts of wisdom that are just so simple. We're all in this together, right? That's like the number one thing when I'm dealing with, you know, a group of people, and like, that's just the most obvious thing to me, that we're all in this together. And it's like, whether you like it or not, we're in this together. So one of my favorite sayings recently is this thing about snow, right? It's like, if you don't find joy in the snow, or you don't find joy in snow, because a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like snow. If you don't find joy in snow, you won't have as much, there'll still be as much snow, but you won't have as much joy, or something like that. And
it's true.
And it's true, right? It's just like, you've got to, like, if you don't like something, just don't even think about it, and let it be. Like you said, this whole holding space thing that you said, right? That makes sense. And it's just a great way to live. I think it's just, you know, it's so free. Magical adventure, Jennifer.
Oh, magical adventure indeed, Jennifer Rose, a woman.
So that's the replacement for spiritual journey, magical adventure.
I definitely support that switch in vernacular.
Yes.
Some other words that I've enjoyed changing, like the word selfish, for example. I think there's a form of being selfish, but then I think there's a form of self-care that some people don't access because of the fear of feeling guilty, right?
Mhm.
Like if you really need a rest, but you're more of a helper and a people pleaser, then you won't take that rest.
Mhm.
So instead of calling it selfish, I've been calling it selfness. I'm going to have some selfness time.
Selfness. I love it. Nice. Beautiful.
Among other fun words, but I do think that upgrading our vernacular, because every single word that we speak is like a ship of content.
Mhm.
And some are big battleships. Like if you use a certain word, it's heavy and you can feel how heavy a certain word is.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then there's other words, they're little light, fluffy things,
Mhm.
but you string them together in a sentence and you've just launched a ship. And
Mhm.
what's that ship up to?
Mhm.
And because of the gravity of a meaning of a word over time, as it's shared by the collective consciousness, as we start to come into new ways of feeling and relating, we need new vocabulary.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. And you will notice me probably often kind of pausing right as I'm speaking because I try to be aware of what I say, and I know, I know how the universe works, or I like to work with the universe. Let's say it that
Mhm.
way. I mean, I don't know everything, but I like to work with the universe. And I do know that when you say certain things, you know, the universe hears that and takes that literally, right? So I'm using this as an example, universe. I'm not,
Okay,
I'm
the
not,
universe is
I'm
listening.
not saying this about myself, but when you say things like I'm broke,
Mhm.
you're reinforcing these belief systems about money. You're reinforcing these energetic things about yourself, and you're telling the universe, hey universe, I'm broke. And the universe is saying, okay, you're
What do
broke.
you want to say instead?
You want to say, I am abundant, I bring abundance to me. I you know what, I don't what do I
I
want to
got
say?
one for you.
Say it.
I'm a delicious wealth meister.
I am a delicious wealth meister.
I
I am a delicious wealth meister. It's
am
true.
the maestro of wealth.
And we didn't even plan that out. You knew that already, and that's awesome. Yeah. So let's back this up a little bit because I think
Okay.
we jumped in like we're sitting around the fire and just having a blast. You are involved in this community because you do Reiki, which is an
Mhm.
energetic practice. You are a death doula, which I think that's also an energetic practice in a way. I mean, I think it's more of a psychological um, massage. Somebody
Mhm.
who's really good with psychology and understanding people, and yoga. Again, which is all about moving energy around. So you are you live a life that's very energetically based. How'd you get there? Was it always that way for you? Did you start off as a kid, like connected?
Mhm.
You did.
I think, like most of us, we have memories of being a child and feeling really connected and knowing things and experiencing things.
Hmm. Hmm.
And for me, it took me all the way until very recently to really identify how telepathic I am because I had no context for that. There's no teacher for that.
Hmm.
But I remember in elementary school, for example, something that stands out very clearly. I was sitting in my second grade class. I won't say my teacher's name, even though it probably doesn't matter. And we were taking a spelling test, but in my mind, I could hear her arguing with her husband. Like I could hear it because
Well,
she was reliving it in her mind while she's giving this spelling test. And you can imagine, I'm a little kid, I'm very open, and we're just sitting in a classroom and she's leading the space basically. And I could hear this argument in my mind. And I remember at the time thinking to myself, how can any of us focus on spelling the word story when when this is happening in the room and it's so loud?
mm,
And similar experiences like that from my childhood.
mm,
And I feel from the time I was little, I felt the state of connectedness. I really felt connected to something that was greater than myself
mhm,
before I could start thinking about what it was, right? Before I started understanding dogma,
mhm, mhm,
I had this constant sensation that there was this loving presence in my life
mhm,
that was guiding me, would talk to me. And that's where I think the telepathy, because for me, universe and life speak to me through what feels like telepathy. And sometimes I've described it as if I'm reading a book, but I'm not reading anything, but my brain's interpreting it as if I'm reading something. And the information, or hearing a conversation, but there's no conversation, but my brain and system are registering it as if that's what's taking place.
Yeah, interesting. Now, let me know what you think about this, right? Because this is you telling me a story about you and how you identify with that experience, right? And you're saying telepathy, and Kelly says telepathy is real. And I know there's a big thing right now with the telepathy tapes that's going on. That's amazing. And for me, I agree with you, and I see everything kind of as one, right? So even that idea is telepathy is real and that we're connected is, of course we're connected. But I guess my question is this: how does telepathy relate to thought? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for asking this question.
Good.
Okay. My perception is that telepathy or perceiving can be done on every plane of existence. So, for example, some telepathic information that I receive, it comes from stored or crystallized energy that's in someone's field. And that's when I feel like I'm reading something like a book, and they're not necessarily thinking it, but there's an emotional charge in the field, and it's full of the content about that thing, right? It's full of the original trauma from which it came, plus all of the times that thing got triggered. And it's like there's all this information in this plasmic mass. And then as far as telepathy is related to thought, if we imagine, I love the concept that thought is an element. So we have the element of earth, the element of water, the element of fire, air, ether, thought.
I like that.
And every time we think, we're creating a wave that has all the information of the thought that we just thought. And I'm not saying that it's flowing through the air as the exact verbal thought that you had.
Right.
Content.
Energetically.
Yes.
Yeah.
The frequency that your thought created is now available to everything within the universe, not just the people in the room.
I love what you're saying, and it's bringing me to some of these thoughts that I've had before, and I've tried to talk to people about them, and I don't know if they understand them, and I feel like you will understand that, right? So just elaborate a little bit on what you're saying, right? So this thought now that you've generated, it exists now as a frequency in the universe. Is it moving around the universe? What is it doing?
I feel like quantum entanglement is a really good way to describe it. I think partly when we have quantum entanglement, for example, if I think I have a friend who lives up here, he doesn't use any technology and he's really hard to get a hold of. But one day I thought, oh man, I really need to contact River. And so I sat down and I was like, River, hey, where are you? Are you okay? Like, I'd love to catch up. He showed up at my house the next day.
Wow.
And so I think in that instance, I was targeting a thought at a person. And so my thought matched their frequency. And because of the kind of person he is, he received the message.
Great. I love that. I love that answer. And that's kind of the idea that, you're an antenna and that you're tuning into these different frequencies, right?
Yeah.
So tell me what you think about this, because I'm trying to figure this out.
Okay, what are we puzzling, Michael?
This is an energetic concept. I don't know, that I got to figure out. So you're the Beatles, right?
Okay.
And
can I be George Harrison?
You could be George Harrison, absolutely. Okay, and you just wrote, "Here comes the sun," right? You just wrote that. You sing it to your buddies, and they're like, "Oh, I feel it. Let's do it. Let's make it a song." You work it out in the studio. You make this song. You create it. You record it. It's played on the radio. It's a vibration. It's a sound, right? So somebody hears that now, and they've interacted with that energy, right? They've processed that energy. They got feelings from it, whatever it was, and then it moves on. But then they hear that song 20 years later. It's that same energy, and this is my concept, is it's that same energy that's just been kind of floating around the universe that, and I guess we could say that they've tuned into that frequency that's there. So I'm asking if it's moving around and floating around, but you're making it very clear to me that no, it's just everywhere all the time, and you're
Yeah.
just tuning into it like a TV wave, like a
Yes.
radio wave, which makes
Exactly.
that makes a lot of sense too. But I
I
love
have
the idea of that.
things to say.
Yes.
Okay, number one, I feel like when music is received by so many people in the collective, it actually gives it more power and more force. And
Okay.
now there's a lot of people experiencing it, creating memories with it, creating likes and dislikes with it. And it actually charges that thing
Just to
in the
that energy.
universe, in our collective consciousness.
Yeah, I love that.
And to speak to that, the Beatles were extremely experimental, and also they, from my perspective, they really understood some things about telepathy and the collective consciousness, especially John Lennon. And there's a lot of stories about people going insane, believing that John Lennon was talking to them in their dreams. And when I started hearing these stories, I was like, I actually perceive that to be incredibly true. Because for people who are more sensitive and closer, like their veils are less, when people start to become powerful on the collective subconscious plane, we all know each other there. We all communicate to each other there. And there are some people who are literally like famous in the astral plane, but fame there is not like it is here. It's just like a well-knownness. And so there's a great story of this guy escaping from a mental hospital and going to John Lennon's house and waiting outside and saying, no, like, I know I need to talk to him. Like, he's talked to me in my dreams and he's shared information with me and I know it's real. And John Lennon came out of his house and took this dude to lunch and like talked with him.
Wow.
And so I think when you create music from the fabric of your being, especially the kind of fabric and talent that John Lennon had, he like uploaded his soul into the collective consciousness where we could all access it. So there's that thought.
I love that. I love that thought. And it just so happens that I know a few people who have channeling experiences with John Lennon, and one in particular was somebody who had no musical background or knowledge or talent, and was able to take whatever he was channeling to a musician and to a studio and have them kind of translate it, and you know, it sounded like John Lennon. You know what I mean? It was really, really incredible. You know, and you know what I think is so amazing. I was talking about this shift at the beginning of the show that we're going through, and what I think is so amazing is like even myself, right? Like 15 years ago, I saw a guy on YouTube channeling the Galactic Federation, and I was like, "What the heck is this guy doing?" You know what I mean? And then, you know, fast forward 10 years, maybe even 5 years, right? So now 10 years ago, instead of 15 years ago, I experience a channeler. Her name's Sarah Curley, who I have an emotional response to. Like, just like, what's going on, right? I mean, she's speaking light language and I'm bawling. I'm just like so connected to it, and like, what the heck is going on? And then I furthered that by, you know, going up to her after the it was like a workshop, and I said, hey, do you do one-on-one sessions? And she said yes, and I bartered with her, just like kind of like you do. I do web design and I do photos and stuff like that. So we did a photography session, I believe, and I did her website as well. But I bawled in the one-on-one session, and every time I dealt with her, you know, it was a very emotional thing, and that really shifted my whole perception about what channeling was, and the validity of it. You know what I mean? And also, I think it allowed me to experience understanding what feeling was, right? Experiencing something through the heart. And experiencing it through the energy of it, and not experiencing it as just a 3D experience.
Right. And not tearing apart, because with light language, especially, you can't, it doesn't go through the intellectual mind. And so it bypasses the ego and the intellectual mind. So you can access the heart differently when that's happening. And yes, Angelo, I think that's what that
Yep,
said.
Angelo said all we need is love, and Ronnie is here. Thanks for the inspiration. Thanks for being here, Ronnie Shabazian. I love that last name, Shabazian. Did I say that right? Very nice. Yeah, it's. I don't even really know what to ask you, because I feel like I just want to go run through the field with you, and just, just absorb the energy of the world. I think you have a really great understanding of what it is to be a human being, in 3D here.
Thank you.
And for me, that's what I'm trying to navigate right now, is the balance between kind of knowing my connection to the other dimensions, but still having to function in 3D, right? And
Yeah.
you know what? I'm struggling with my words. I get to function in 3D. I don't have to function in 3D.
From what I can tell, you're doing a great job, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And it happens, right? Like, so you just saw a moment where I slipped for a second. I said, "Oh man, I have to function in 3D." And honestly, up until that moment, that was my mindset. And that you just actually saw my mindset change. I don't have to function in 3D. I get to function in 3D.
This is a fun game.
Yeah.
I love this idea that this body that I'm in is the ship that holds my essence. And that while I'm here on earth, like, this is the vessel that gets me around. And through this vessel, I can create things. Like, I make these hanging art things, and they're an expression of my essence. I sing songs, and that's an expression of my essence. I bake pies, and that's an expression of my essence. And it's the process of actualizing the essence of my soul through the human vessel. And that sometimes that can feel cumbersome, because I think on a soul level, we're not accustomed to time and the physical delay of things. But that's actually where some of the sweetest pleasure comes from, is the patience required to be human. And I also wanted to come back. You mentioned twice the change and the shift that we're in on earth right now.
Yeah.
And each time that you brought that up, in the first time you brought it up also in reference to sometimes the way people behave on social media when they are getting that small temporary hit of pleasure by sharing something unkind or trolling or getting into these little arguments online. And that energy on earth right now seems extremely prevalent. And one of the things that I've learned about being human and being embodied and becoming more clean and clear as a person myself was observing that kind of energy. And I'm curious if anyone listening, all you psychic mediums and stuff, that energy to me feels like a dark, dirty orange, and sometimes like a dark, dirty red. And it usually sits in the, sometimes it looks like people are wearing a floaty that you would wear in a pool, like that flotation device, but it's just like bloated emotional stuckness that lives in the auric field or in the plasmic field. And it is not only magnetic, meaning it attracts like frequencies. They don't always have to show up identically, but then it also provokes it to come out of you. And I observe it as being, the triangle, the drama triangle, and how the drama triangle is this experience of there's someone to blame, there's someone to save, and there's someone doing the saving. And that energy, when we get caught in it, it is like a vortex that it's a channel that we can be on, literally. And if you're in that channel, guess what? Anyone around that is having similar thoughts of blame, feeling victimized, feeling like a martyr, I have to save everyone, they're all playing in the same game. And I think it's this dynamic that we're experiencing. Some people are exiting it. Some people, it's getting very loud. And some people are dropping further into it, which is making more and more people actually go to sleep.
You know what? I'm glad you're saying that, because I do have some friends who are kind of in that energy. And it's funny because it's like it's just been a growth for me, right, to not necessarily respond to it, and to allow it. Same thing, right? Holding space for it is just a way of honoring it, even though it's something I don't agree with, right? And something that I see as possibly negatively affecting my friend. You know what I mean? But I know where my power lies, and my power is only in what I can do and the love I can give, and the love I can be, and that love is only going to affect the people that it's going to affect. It's not going to affect the people that it's not going to affect, right?
Yeah.
So excuse me. So I'm glad that you said that, and I do think that's a big, to me and to you probably it seems very obvious, right? It's like a very hypocritical energy, um, but again, to honor other people's experience, right? I am not anybody except myself. So the reason I can even have this show is because I don't, I can't, even though I can try, I find it very difficult to deny somebody else's experience,
Yeah.
whatever that is, you know what I mean? You could tell me that you're channeling Bigfoot, you know what I mean? And I'd be like, cool, let's see. What does that look like? Show me, what does that look like? I see we got some good questions here.
Yeah, we did.
And I want to bring those up. I have Tani and Ra or Ro watching from Australia. I love it when the show becomes international. Thank you for tuning in. But we have Bernadette who is asking, can you please talk about your experience as a death doula? So if you don't mind, I mean, probably most of the audience knows what that is, but just a brief kind of, what is a death doula?
Yeah, a death doula or a death midwife can take on a few different forms. So for me, I went to school to become a death doula because I was fascinated by the process and the reality of it. And I was driven into that work because from my observation, the way our westernized mind holds the concept of death is like becoming a big blockage to really living. And so I wanted to dive more deeply into that. And then right when I finished school, I'll go into that in a minute. So a death doula is somebody who usually comes in.
Oh, I think you froze. As we are learning who a death doula is. Oh, I think she's back. Nope.
I'm back. Thank God.
Yes,
it was a small
yes, you're back.
So a death doula can come in at a terminal diagnosis is given. A death doula can also come in at when people are dying of older age and it's obvious that they're sundowning. And in those situations, they tend to be really helpful to the family members, as well as to the one who's dying. They kind of act like the stabilizer, and can also help communicate to the doctors or the nurses and different people around, so that the family's only responsibility really is to be in the grieving process and be with that loved one. So the death doula can hold space for that. It's one of the roles. Another role is to hold space in a spiritual way. So it wouldn't be that different from calling in like a pastor when someone's dying. And then there are some people who also work on the other end of death, which that's usually my job. So as a death doula, I tend to work with people who are losing loved ones. So most of my work has been with people my age whose parents have received terminal illnesses. And I found myself in this very unique position because I was also a preschool teacher for a long time. So I find myself working with parents whose parents are passing, and they also have children, and they're not really sure how to hold any of that. And so I'll work with parents on how to talk to their children about the process that's occurring. What emotions? Most parents get really freaked out about displaying their sadness in front of their children, which is an interesting one to navigate. And I've always said, it's okay to let them see you go through it. This is how they learn, because it's not about hiding the pain from them, but it's about showing them that happens and then letting them watch you come back. Because you're teaching them conflict and resolution.
Absolutely. That's brilliant. Nobody ever thinks of that, right? Well, they're going to experience this more in their life, right? This is, can't hide this from them. That's brilliant. Yeah.
So start early, just let them know what's going on, because they're also really intuitive. So if they can sense that you're really sad and you say, no, I'm not, you're actually causing confusion for them. So that, and then also working with people to be able to talk to their parents about the process that they're in, because it also can get touchy depending on the person who's passing. Some people don't want to, like some people live in denial until the very end. So they don't want it to be talked about. They don't want it to be brought up.
Right.
They don't even want to make plans.
Right.
And so sometimes if someone's in that state where they're in denial still, I'll give my clients conversations that they can bring up that aren't necessarily about death and dying, but still give the person who's dying, for example, an opportunity to do a life review. It's one of the most important things we can offer to someone is listening to them talk about their life, everything that they remember, and holding space for that, because it helps clear a lot of the energy before they prepare to exit the body.
Right. Sure. Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, literally, I guess, what am I trying to ask here? So, I mean, as a death doula, I like that you talked about you're not necessarily helping the person who's doing the passing, but you're helping the people who are being affected by it, right? So what would that involve? Like you go spend time with them and you just kind of, is it like almost like psychology, but not, right? Like you're not obviously asking them questions, right? But you're just there to support and be there for them to talk it through, I guess, right? I mean, I'm just imagining. Yeah.
I'd also like to answer the question in a secondary way, because I practice as a death doula on a sort of psychic multidimensional plane. And that's something I talk about a little bit less, but I think this crew would love to hear it.
Yes, I was dying to get into the multidimensional aspect of you.
Yeah.
I think we already kind of did, but you know, that's me, you know.
So when someone comes to me in the process of losing a loved one, I'll usually work with them from anywhere between 6 months and a year. And the process is holding space for them, whatever comes up. So sometimes it is me just listening to how frustrated they are and honoring the stage of grief that is anger. Sometimes it is listening to them express about, I'm really struggling to talk to my son about what death is. And so that session becomes almost a lesson with tools that they can use to communicate with their children. Or I'm really struggling with how to talk to my parent about such and such. And then that session becomes like me listening, but then also sharing tools and tactics that they can practice so that they can navigate. So essentially, I'm enabling that person to be a better space holder and also holding space for them for all that comes up. Sometimes a session is just listening to someone cry. Because oftentimes when we're having these really super intense emotions, we can feel like we're exhausting our resources. So if you go to hang out with your friends every other Saturday and every other Saturday, you're still a wreck because you just lost someone that you love, eventually you don't want to do that anymore. And so you start masking when you go hang out with your friends. And a lot of people actually just need a place to fall apart.
Right.
And so oftentimes I hold that position of this is the place where you can let it all go and say all the things you need to say. I also find that in the process of working with people 6 months to a year, I get to walk through them and even remind them of the stages of grief, because there's a day that comes when you feel completely unaffected by the loss of a loved one. And you know what almost always follows that is tremendous guilt. And then what follows that is tremendous anger. And it doesn't always have to go in those orders, but sometimes 5 months after someone has passed, I get on the phone with a client and they're like, I am angry and I had no idea why. And I'm like, well, there's all this stuff that's working on the undercurrents of you. And remember, this is part of the stage.
Sure.
This is the stage of your grief. Yeah. So that is what I do.
Wow. It's beautiful that you can do that. Now, I'm curious as to, not that like suddenly I'm interested in doing it, but what was going to school like for it? Like, was it like a lot of psychology stuff and like just kind of learning how to listen? I mean, I feel like obviously you're great at that, obviously. And I don't know, is that what it's all about?
I went to a school that's based in LA called Sacred Crossings. And it was a combination of many things. It was largely spiritual. The woman who ran it obviously has a background where she actually works with bathing the bodies and holding 3-day vigils after people pass. She was a Reiki practitioner and a healer. So a lot of the school actually was reading books. So I read, for example, The Art of Living and Dying by Osho. And Dying Wise by Stephen Jenkinson. Stephen Jenkinson is one of my favorite teachers when it comes to death.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a lot of meditations about going through the process of dying ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We did a lot of work on vulnerability and being able to witness other people in their vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
One of the exercises we did was we got paired up in twos, and music was playing for 15 minutes. And one of us just sat and watched. And for 15 minutes, the other one just danced and danced and danced and danced. They had to dance the whole 15 minutes.
Wow.
When you're being watched, you're like, I don't want to dance. I feel so uncomfortable. And when you're the one watching, you can sense how uncomfortable they feel. And it kind of actually becomes uncomfortable to watch.
Mm.
But what we were learning was this is what dying can feel like. You're going through this incredible process.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people wish they could just run away and hide. So how do you hold it?
Right.
And also it was an exercise in understanding how vulnerable it feels to be in that position.
Brilliant. Wow. That's very cool. I love that, the psychology of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to just kind of go back. I saw some comments happening, and sometimes we're in flow, so I don't like to interrupt. But Bernadette started. She was talking about her mom was in hospice and she didn't know when she passed. Evelyn, she said, she's telling Evelyn, she's saying that it's still hard. She feels so much grief and sadness. So I guess as a death doula, what comes to mind first? The first thing to say when you hear somebody still, experiencing these things.
Yeah. I wrote a poem, actually. It's called There's No Comfort There. And sometimes I feel like the kindest thing that can be said is that those feelings are there and there's no thing that will make it feel better. I don't have words that are a salve for it. I don't have a medication to take it away. You can't meditate hard enough to make it go away. And sometimes allowing it to be what it is what causes the relief.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, I feel like, it's funny because crying, right, is normally associated with this grief and associated with these feelings. And I find I guess at one point in my life, it occurred to me that crying was a moment that you are literally kind of crossing realms, right? You're physical, but you're also kind of touching your soul at that moment, because that's what they talk about, manifestation, right? That you can, with your thoughts, create things into physical reality. Well, that's what crying is, because whatever's going on in your thoughts at that moment, you feel it right here, your throat, you choke up, your eyes start to actually produce physical water. So there it is right there, manifestation. Your thoughts are creating something physical. So to me, that was always very significant. And now, even when I am feeling sad, right, something happened and I'm feeling sad and I get to the point of crying, because of where I've framed crying in that energy, suddenly I feel joy in that cry. You know what I mean? And that's amazing, because that takes me out of whatever it is that's brought me down to that level. Now it's not a down level. Now it's an up level. Now it's, this kind of connection with that energy, and it is the same energy, I mean, it is, I think it's difficult to say that. So just to follow up on a positive note, my mom has visited me many times and shown me where she is. I am closer to her than when she was alive. So that's awesome to hear. So even
Thank you, Bernadette.
Yes, thank you, Bernadette. Even through that grief and anger that you feel, you're still experiencing the joy. And I think that's an important thing too, right? That's just the idea that it's all one. It all needs to exist together, and you need to just accept it and let it be what it is.
Yeah.
Which sounds a lot easier than it is sometimes.
Oh, nobody said it was easy.
Yeah.
But that's my advice, I guess.
Yeah.
And the reality of in a lot of cultures that have more strong death practices, everyone grieves together for days. And people stop working and literally sing for days. And they come together in grief. And I perceive grief as a couple of things. Grief is where it's the feeling that's left when your love doesn't have anywhere to go anymore. So if you loved your mother, for example, and then all of a sudden here on this earth plane, she's not there anymore, You still have this resource that was usually allocated to her, but you can't give it in the same way anymore. So that's one of the aspects of grief, which is simultaneously beautiful because any grief we have is evidence of how much we loved.
Mm-hmm.
And the other concept is that grief is either a separating agent or a bonding agent.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see inside family systems, when somebody passes away, it can explode a whole family because everyone's dealing with their grief in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes my work with clients is actually helping them hold space for all the different ways that their other family members are grieving. Because
Wow.
some family members go into denial, some family members go into rage, some family members go into catatonic states and feel like they can't do anything. And then everyone's judging each other for the way that the other one is processing.
Mm-hmm.
So that grief can actually explode family systems and friendships and different things. However, grief can also be used as this incredible bonding agent. So there's this potential within grief to become closer to other people who are still existing here on this plane with you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also one of the greatest points of creation,
Mm-hmm.
because if the love that can't go to that being or situation any longer still exists within you, it is potential. It's pure potential. If you can find an outlet that feels good for it to come through, like singing, dancing, creating, making pies.
Right. I love that. Singing, dancing, making pies. Brian says they don't leave you, they just go to the next place. Which is, I think that's probably part of your belief system that helps you, be a death doula, right? And you actually spoke about it, that you said a lot of the feelings that are coming are because of people fearing death, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the spiritual community, right? I mean, we all kind of subscribe to the idea that we're energetic beings and this is just part of the experience. So I think in that community, in our community, there's not a lot of fear of death, but I do think in the mainstream, I guess you can call it, again, I'm not a big fan of the terminology and labeling things, but the way that we grew up, it wasn't kind of the shared belief. And again, I am delighted and I see a lot of hope in the growing communities, the growing awareness of people embracing these ideas, and science embracing these ideas. Quantum theory and quantum science is really kind of confirming a lot of ancient knowledge, it seems, which is really cool. Like, again, like at the beginning of the show, I said you could look at it as bad times or you could look at it as great times. I think it's amazing times. I think humanity is going through something that is changing us significantly, and to be alive in a time where that in 500 years they're going to be like, oh yeah, that was the time humanity went through this shift and changed. It's great to be alive.
It is great to be alive. Nice to be here on planet Earth with you.
Yes, thank you so much. Nice to be
Yeah,
here too.
I do feel this. It's a feeling that I've had for a long time, but I have never been able, it's difficult for me to describe it, but I'm going to do my best.
Okay.
I feel simultaneously dead and alive at the same time. I have an awareness that I'm currently dead, but I'm also alive. And that is, for me, like, okay, yeah, duh, that's what eternal means. That's infinite. And when I die, I'll also simultaneously feel alive. And having, I think in these experiences of the humanness, we can go so far into the I'm alive right now and I'm going to die someday. And you're like, oh yeah, no, but you're dead right now and someday you're going to live.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
I love that. I love those little things in life that you realize and all of a sudden you're like, okay, I can deal with this. Everything's better. And one of them for me, right? Self-love kind of thing. Like, how do you become this way? Right. Was not so much realizing like, okay, I think that society kind of points us in a direction to compare ourselves to other people, right? You should be this, you should be that. And so growing up, you look at, celebrities and things that you think are better, right? And you find yourself at moments wishing oh, I wish I was somebody else, right? And I'm not saying universe, I'm just telling a story. um and 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 the truth of the matter is I could never be anybody else, right?
Mhm.
But let's flip the perspective on that and make that happy. Nobody can ever be me.
Yeah.
Nobody can be me ever. And that, again, it's all about how you look at things, right? And how you frame
You're
it.
your own precious gem.
Exactly. I am my
Yeah.
own precious gem. As are you. And we are gemming together right now for the world. I love it. Totally. And Tim is in the audience too.
Hi,
Tim
Tim.
Tim said that he went through all these different ways of dealing with grief. His daughter passed in July, and he's
Mm.
been a listener of my shows for a long time, and we went through that all together. But I do think I agree with you that I think that these experiences just edify our essence, right? Having
Yeah.
gone through these, and sometimes they feel that way. Sometimes they feel heavy and dark, and you're grieving. And I've had to actually comfort. I know a friend of mine was crying recently, right? Her dad had passed a couple of months ago, and she was thinking about her dad and crying and feeling so sad. And I said, yeah, but that energy that's making you cry, that thought in your head about you're missing your dad, that's him. He's there with you right now
Right.
because he's in your head. He's like, and so that's that idea of transforming that crying from a sad cry into a happy cry, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, my dad's here with me right now. I can feel him because I'm thinking about him.
Mhm.
It's really great, to be
I
able.
think too, in with some of these heavier emotions from our human state, especially when we start these esoteric paths, there becomes this conception that you're not supposed to feel like that anymore,
Right.
right? I've done so much work on my spirituality. Like, why do I feel angry? I've done so much work on, like understanding that there's life after death, but why do I still feel so much pain that they're gone?
Hmm, hmm.
And it's a paradox.
It
You
totally
might
is.
you might really understand that you will see them and connect to them. And even on this earth plane, they come to you in dreams and they give you signs and they give you symbols. And still, the part of you that's experiencing this human individual nature is missing the presence of that being in this dimension with you.
Hmm, hmm.
And there's no amount of spiritual like connection that like occasionally it might come in and lift you up a little bit,
Hmm.
but the human, the being, the body, that part of us still needs to process. And there's nothing wrong with us as spiritual beings to be feeling those things. In fact, they're incredibly precious.
Yeah.
The pearls, that sand in the oyster shell that gets in there, and eventually you have a pearl. But if the sand never gets in there, you have no pearls.
It's great. I love that. I love that. Um, Let me ask you a question. Do you have a show? Do you do a show?
I'm going to start in July.
Awesome. Awesome. You really should. You really should. You're so dynamically expressive in your thoughts and these ideas, which I think are really important for us to share. So I feel like sometimes I take it for granted, right? That I'm in this spiritual community and I'm like, oh, everybody knows this stuff. I'm not telling anybody anything new. But the truth is that, there are a lot of people who don't realize that everything they need is inside of them, and that they
Mhm.
should love themselves, and when you look in the mirror that you should feel a certain way. So that's what holding space is about, and I can't tell you how pleased I am at the space that we held tonight together.
Really beautiful. Thank you
Really
so much.
good.
We went on I loved the meandering. Thank you for holding the space. Thank you for the wonderful questions. And
Yeah.
also, thanks for letting me ask you some questions at the beginning. That was
Thank
fun.
you for asking them. This is what it should be. The reason I was asking if you had your own show is because I was going to say we should do a show together.
Let's do it. I'll book you.
Awesome. Let's talk about it, because I do believe that conversation and kind of the way that you do it and the way that you interact with people is part of the catalyst of
Mm.
moving that energy around, and if we're good at it, let's do it again. Bernadette says we should do it again.
Bernadette, okay. And also,
Awesome.
Evelyn, thank you so much. And to all of you guys that came here and watched and listened, I'm incredibly grateful.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mary, for chiming in. Jennifer Rose, thank you for everything. And Kim
Absolutely.
and Evelyn, and I believe Bernadette, I've seen you guys a few times now, and I really appreciate your receiving me so beautifully and for
Totally.
listening.
Totally.
I'm sure, like you, Michael, I love to share, but if there's no one to receive it, like you can't share, right? So in order for us to do what we love, all of you are absolutely required. And it means a lot to me that you guys have all came.
Thank you so much for saying that. I thank everybody for being here, and again, that's exactly, she did it better than I would. So thank you, Suri, for that. Let me ask you a question, just off the bat, because this was a lot of fun. Are you free on Thursday?
Yes, I'm free on Thursday.
So this Thursday on Live Stream of Consciousness, we're going to continue this conversation with Suri Sawyer. I'm going to ask her, and I'm telling her now so she can prepare, and she probably already has the answer. What is consciousness?
Oh,
What
fun.
is consciousness? So on the live stream of consciousness on Thursday, my guest will be Suri Sawyer. Awesome. I'm excited about that. Thank you so much. Really, thank you so much. This was great. I feel like this year and through the Sacred Spiral, I've made a lot of new friends. The guests that I have, we're all connected. We're all reflections of each other. We're all reflecting the amazing people in the chat room, right? Who are here, Bernadette and Eveline. You guys are amazing. I see you guys. I want to acknowledge you. You're always here supporting the vibration, right? That's what we're actually supporting. We're raising the vibration together. So thank you guys for being here. Suri, don't sign off. I'm just going to run the outro, and I want to talk to you, but I will see you guys on Thursday, and Suri will be here too.
See you Thursday, everyone.
We'll see you guys on Thursday. Adios.